All right, bang, bang. Today is Tuesday. It's May 3rd. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. I'm here with Chief, of course, on a Tuesday. Chief, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I got to tell you something right off the bat.
Go for it.
Your hat looks great.
Your hat looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where could the people find these?
These are in store.barstoolsports.com under the Chicago page. They're fire hats. I think these we've put out hats before. I think these are my favorites so far. You got all the colors. I got the patch one on. You got the script one on. They're both great. And this is, I'm not a guy who likes rocking team merch all the time. I don't really wear a ton of Blackhawks Cubs stuff. This hat is like my speed. So it's kind of unique looking.
Very Chief hat.
Very Chief hat. Very good looking hat. Get on them.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, go check it out, and you'll see what we're talking about. Go check it out in the store. Mm-hmm. What else is up? You just had a full week of hunting turkeys.
Full week of out in nature, and I really enjoyed it.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I don't really.
Just murdering an animal. Just something about that.
It's fucking primal, and I got the turkey meat in my fridge right now. I'm gonna cook it tonight. And, I asked the guys, because we had Sydney and then we had these two other guys who were like our guides in Nebraska, and they're professional hunting guides. And I texted them and I'm like, hey, what do I have to do to make sure this turkey meat is safe to eat? Because I'm thinking poultry, I've seen John Taffer, raw meat, shut it down. It's got all this fucking disgusting stuff. You can't even touch raw meat. They're like, soak it in a little bit of salt water if you really want to be careful about it. But it's just straight from nature. It's eating good shit. It's living a good life. And it's not some disgusting hormone-fed, antibiotic shot up thing living in a small pen in the dark like you get with your normal poultry. So it's clean and healthy. And it makes me feel good. It does. So I did have a little bit of that, because you shoot them and they don't die right. They die, but they have, ever heard that expression, run around with the chicken with its head cut off? Yeah. Okay, so the turkeys will do that too. And they're not running around, but they're convulsing and flapping their wings. They're dead, but they still have the nerve endings are getting signals, even though they're deader than dead. And it's man, this, I feel bad for this turkey. I can't, I don't know if that's normal or not, but I did have a little sense of that. So you have the adrenaline rush, and then you're watching, and you're oh shit. And then you feel good again. So I think this is gonna be part of my life now, is doing this hunting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And I really love being out in the nature. I live in the fucking rat infested city of smog and soot everywhere. It was good to get out in that clean air and harvest some meat.
We're going to be talking some earth, talking some nature this show, right?
A little Earth Day theme, a little couple weeks late.
That's great.
Yeah.
Before we really get into it, though, I do want to talk about Upstart, everybody, because saying goodbye to high-interest credit card debt is one of the first steps toward financial independence. But the interest month after month can feel like you're in a never-ending hamster wheel. We don't want that. So that's where Upstart comes in. Upstart-powered personal loans can help you pay down high-interest debt all online with simple and easy-to-understand payment terms. Whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high-interest debt, or funding personal expenses, Upstart can help you get one fixed monthly payment with a clear payoff date. Upstart knows you're more than just a credit score, so rather than looking at your credit score alone, Upstart's model considers other factors like your income, employment, and other information provided in your loan application to find you a smarter rate for your loan. What's great, too, is you can even receive the funds as fast as one business day after accepting your loan. So don't wait and check your rate today at upstart.com/Eddie. That's upstart.com/Eddie, EDDIE. Don't forget to check your rate today. And don't forget to use that URL to let them know we sent you. That's important. One more time, loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/Eddie and start being smarter about your debt today. Okay, Chief.
Okay.
Earth Day. Earth Day, a week late, 2 weeks late.
Yeah, and this is something I'd like to do more of, just because I feel like all the news and anything that goes viral or gets people talking is all doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. Everything's bad. Everybody's the worst. Everybody is getting canceled. We're all going to die, all this kind of shit. And it's actually, there's a lot of good news out there. I know we've talked about that before, doing Good News Friday. We're actually recording this on a Friday, so it kind of fits with that theme. And, I saw this this tweet by ABC News Chicago on April 22nd, which was Earth Day. And it said, Earth has lost 1/3 of its forests over the past 10,000 years, nearly half since 1990, according to National Geographic. It's a tough time to be a tree, but there's still hope for those that are left. For more on this story, visit natgeo.com. There's like very conflicting numbers about that report. And there's another organization called humanprogress.org, and it says that deforestation has stopped in wealthy countries. Europe's forest area grew by more than 0.3% annually from 1990 to 1990 to 2015. In the United States, has grown by 1% annually. So there's more forests in the northern hemisphere now than there were in 1950. So like we're actually kind of like bucking that trend, and there's a lot of trends that are in that area, and some of it is actually is occurring naturally, because while the planet is getting hotter and that is a net negative overall, it's actually kind of good for trees because they want a longer growing season. They want to have more carbon in the atmosphere, because what do trees eat or breathe in? They breathe in carbon. So some of that is natural, but a lot of it is projects around the world, including places like India and China, which are known as being like some of the worst polluter. They are the worst polluters, but they're also starting to combat that. And it goes back to this. There's this guy named Bjorn Lomborg, who is an environmentalist, but he looks at it from a very different approach than someone like who's that Greta Thunberg, right? Mm-hmm. Who's screaming about God knows what. I haven't heard from her in a while, but that girl is so annoying. Go to class. And but this guy he came up with this theory where it's like, hey, and he charted it. And I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, so forgive me, but it's basically like people don't care about the environment until they get to a certain level of income, and once they do, then they really care. So his thing was like, in order to have a long-term and a better approach to climate change or the environment in general, you need to make as many people wealthy as quickly as you possibly can. And that is, one of those sticking points that was in that Paris Peace Accord. I think Obama signed and Trump repealed. I'm not sure. I think Biden might have had us rejoin, and people are like, well, this is unfair, to the United States, which it was in the West. Like we were held to a much different standard than some of these other countries. But if you're using that, and I don't think the Paris Peace Accord took Bjorn Lomborg's thinking into factored it in, but it's basically like, yeah, let some of these countries that are, developing or underdeveloped have access to cheaper fossil fuel energies, because they don't fucking care about what's going on in the Amazon while they don't have food to eat and they can't heat their house. So you have to get them to a certain level economically before they'll be able to make real changes. And they're never going to make real changes, and it will be harder for them to make changes unless you allow them access to cheaper fuels. It makes sense to me. And then the other thing is you get more nutrition is most important when you're young. So they want to so it goes along with this, you need to get these countries to a level economically where they're able to care and able to do something about it, because your IQ actually can go up. So a lot of your IQ is, you're just predisposed to it at birth. So there's something called a fluid IQ and then a static IQ, I think are the two words for it. But you can really improve your adult IQ by how you're educated and really what your nutrition is when you're young. So it's the other Bjorn Lomborg thing is we need to get as many young kids educated and healthy as soon as possible to stop climate change. So it's just like he took like a multivariate look at this, as opposed to being like fossil fuels bad. And it was pretty interesting. And I don't know if he's right or wrong, but it's a different approach. And then we're seeing a lot of these projects, that they had an aim of, the UN did, of ending poverty by like 2015 it was 2030. They achieved their goals 15 years ahead of pace, So now what we've seen some of this, and you're starting to see that theory of Bjorn Lomborg really take place in places like India and China, because their economies have lifted so many people up out of absolute poverty that now they're in a position where they care about the environment and want to do something about it. And I think those are positive things, and you're seeing the same thing in Africa too. So we can get into some of those things.
That's pretty damn interesting.
I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the people on Amazon, like, what the fuck? Like, they're just trying to
live
for the day.
Right. And I think that's where, if you look at, the stat that, ABC News 7 Chicago put out, most of that deforestation that's occurring is occurring in the Amazon rainforest, because they're still clearing it at, alarming rates, we'll say, for agriculture. And what we've seen in other places like India, China, Africa, is when you do that, it actually you might have like a few years of boom. Okay, when you clear that land, you're able to raise cattle or whatever, plant crops, but eventually that land just dies off. So then you clear the next patch. But you have such rapid diminishing returns when you're doing that it actually makes it not work.
Not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and it actually hurts your long-term ability to produce food. And and we can get into that a little bit too with some of these. There's some like incredible projects that are going on all over the world that are increasing reforestation and helping people live better, longer, healthier, and wealthier lives, which all those things are related, because like I said, you're not going to care about, a rainforest in Nigeria or Brazil when you can't afford, when you're shivering at night and you're hungry. Like, all you care about is the next day.
That's such a rock and a hard place though, man.
Yeah, it is.
All right, this is the land we're given. Like, okay, we know it might be bad to cut it down, but like, hey, we have to fucking...
Yeah,
we got to get ourselves out of this.
And who can say to those people in Brazil, hey, don't fucking do that? It's like, what do you mean don't do that? I will die if I don't do this.
Yeah.
So I can hardly blame those people, and it's not just Brazil. It's Bolivia, Uruguay, all these the northern countries up there, like what is it? What are those countries? Guyana and places like that.
Why don't we get rid of that fucking place where we can't cross?
People are crossing it.
Oh, really?
People are crossing it.
How have you not brought that up?
Because it didn't fit my fucking narrative for that podcast. I was just joking, but that it's the what was it? The something pass, right?
Yeah, that was a crazy one. We did that probably 2 years ago.
So basically, all these migrants that are coming over the southern border, a lot of them came from Chile, and they're originally from like Haiti, and then they were like refugees in Chile. And then when, they had some of these immigration policies, under Biden, there was like a mad dash for the border, and they all had to go through this pass to come. It's one thing if you're coming from Mexico, but if you're coming from South America, you have to go through that stretch of Panama. The Darien Gap.
Yeah.
And
that shit was crazy. Can you look that up, Harry? See when that episode aired? It should say Darien Gap or something like that in the dog walk Google.
So a lot, like, they were able to, I don't know how they're passing it, because like we did the episode where it's like nobody's been able to pass it. They can't build roads, but these people are passing it largely just on foot.
It says January 26, 2021.
Okay.
So over a year ago.
Yeah.
And so the migrant workers from Chile, who are, I want to say most of them were originally from Haiti, were using that pass to get up and get into Mexico and eventually into the United States. But they were able to, people were dying there too.
Yeah, it separates Colombia and Panama. Correct.
And but a lot of people were able to do it, and largely by foot, which is crazy.
That is
just
crazy.
Like walk through this.
Why don't, that's fucking, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Whatever.
Desperation.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a chance to get to America. Well, let's go through this Darien Gap. Fuck it.
So that was a very fascinating episode.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend people go listen
back,
to that if they didn't hear that one.
Because they can't build roads there. It's fucking crazy.
Like this stopgap between two countries that like...
Yeah, like you literally cannot drive all the way from, like California to... If you wanted to do that trip, you get to a part of the Darien Gap where it's like, well, we're fucked.
You can't make it.
Yeah.
Or else there would
no
be a
roads.
road all the way from California to... even
Canada,
higher. Canada
yeah.
to the bottom of the South America.
Right, down to Patagonia. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So you want to get into the environment stuff?
Of course.
All right. So I can't remember if we've talked about this on a podcast. Your memory is better than mine. I think I've blogged it because I've heard about it. So I've at least blogged it. Maybe we talked about it here. So this first one will be a little bit of a refresher. So there's this place in China called the Gobi Desert, and it's like one of the largest deserts in the world, and it had been growing and spreading into China, and at pretty quick pace since the 50s, just inching more and more into these lands that they're using for farming in this rural part of China, like northern China. And it was like, this is a big fucking problem. You got this growing population, a growing urban population, that they need people to be farming and land to be able to farm to supply and support this growing population. So they're like, what do we do? So you've heard of the Great Wall of China.
Yep.
This is going to be, they call it the Great Green Wall of China. So do you remember talking about this, or is this just a
No,
blog?
we never talked about this.
Good. So
Also, when you say grow, you mean it's just like the climate's changing, so that like it's just expanding.
it's spreading.
So
yeah,
okay,
the Gobi
so it's
Desert
like,
was spreading.
So it's
So you have less land to be able to farm because it's just
where
dusty.
it used to be fine. Now it's like, hey, now it's like only a desert.
Yeah, so it was always a desert, right?
Yeah.
It was always a desert, but it was, there were grasslands on that border that were used for agriculture and wildlife and other things. That it was just the desert just kept pushing further and further south, and it was a big threat to their economy, their people. Like you could have famine and all these things if they didn't get this rectified. So they came up with this Great Green Wall. It is a 2,800 mile long border wall, and each citizen in China is responsible one way or another to plant 3 trees per year, which is a lot, right? If you got 1 billion people,
Yeah.
so I don't know how they chart that or whatever, but they say that 500 million people per year take part in this. They have like a big countrywide tree planting event, and a lot of it takes place up at this Great Green Wall. And then there's, so that green wall is stabilized because you have all these trees. It kind of stabilizes the soil, so you don't have like this spreading of the desert, because it's like, no, the soil is going to be locked in. It's going to take more carbon out of the atmosphere. It's going to have more nutrients in the soil, and it has effectively stopped the spreading of this Gobi Desert and reversed it. And it has all these other side benefits, because you're having a lot of trees that are harvested for wood. So you have people that it's made some people millionaires in China just because they own the land that they've done this thing, and the government has imposed things that are like, all right, you're going to harvest X amount of trees. You're going to, if you take one out, you have to plant 3 in its place. So you're not, it's a net gain. So you're creating jobs, you're creating wealth, it's building materials. And then you're also planting young trees. And this is something that I think we've talked about before, but young grasses and young trees take out carbon out of the atmosphere at a much higher rate than mature grasses and mature trees, because it's the same as a kid, or anything young. You have to have like a crazy calorie intake to support the growth to full maturation. And once you get there, you just kind of level off. And so the same thing with trees. Like they take carbon. Young trees take carbon out of the atmosphere at a much more efficient and higher rate than an adult tree. So like if you have these continually planting of these young trees, which probably wouldn't happen organically by itself, you're doing a better job. And so they have a goal by the year 2050 to have 100 billion trees planted in this area. And they said that the total land covered by forest in 1949, which is like the start of Mao's reign of terror, was 10%, and in 2020 it's 25%. So like this is like a huge nationwide project in China that has worked and continues to work, and they're going to 100 billion trees, 100 billion of anything
is a shit ton.
Is a shit ton, and it's like one of those numbers, like you get to a point where you just can't even conceptualize it in your head. But it's a almost 3,000 mile long wall of trees that are used to push back a desert and fix the environment. And it's like, that is like a really cool thing. Are you Googling it?
Yeah, I want to check it out. Oh, damn, this is pretty cool where it splits and you see the desert on one side and
it's huge. It is a huge
it's monster.
It's like stretches like across the entire northern half of China. So it's a very big thing. and they had lost a lot of coverage. And I'll send you this one of what it looked like in China in 1994 or 1984 rather, and what it's like now. There's just way more tree coverage. So
the shit ton.
So good for China on that.
Hey, before we continue talking more about the Earth, let's talk about Chicagoland Chevy dealers. Now's the best time to go check it out, because if you're in a situation where you don't want your brakes to be a little rickety, a little, squeaking.
Your brakes should never be rickety.
They should never be rickety.
That is like the number one thing. Like, buckle your seatbelt and check your brakes, and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, so make sure you do that. And if you do have a problem with your brakes, make sure you go to one of these Chicagoland Chevy dealers, because it's a reputable dealership. You'll get good service.
Reputable?
Is it a word?
Reputable?
Reputable? I feel like that happened.
I
No,
don't think so.
Come on.
But
I try.
Chevy Drive Chicago, we trust them. They are reputable. It's one of those iconic American brands. And if you plug it into ChevyDriveChicago.com, you'll find a dealer nearest you. So get your oil changed, your brakes checked, the whole thing. And if you need a new car, they can help you out with that too.
Go do it. ChevyDriveChicago.com to find your local dealer. Like Chief said, place an order for your brand new custom Chevy today. And if you don't, get your stuff tuned up at a Chevy dealership. It's that easy.
Reputable.
Damn it. I'm really trying. Everyone thinks this is fuck.
I know, Ed.
Okay. Let's get back into the show.
India has been going through, similar things where they have this massive population. They're entering the global economy, later than Western Europe and in North America. And when the English we should do a podcast about like how the English just fucked everything up. America takes all the heat now. Everything can be traced back to like England from, call it 1400 until 1958 or whatever.
Motherfuckers.
Those motherfuckers caused every problem. So, India used to be a colony of the British. So we took all of our Western agriculture ideas and brought them over to India. And India had this system for centuries and centuries of how they like do their rivers and their agriculture and things like that. And we're like, you guys are fucking stupid. Don't do that. So as a result, they had rivers drying up all over the place, all like everywhere. And it was, didn't have access to clean water, couldn't grow anything, couldn't raise animals. You were just poor, hungry, thirsty, dying all over the place. And this is a thing I think I've brought up before, but like when we were kids, you would always see like these commercials about, UNICEF commercials where it's like, hey, for 10 cents a day, you can save some, poor person's life in India or in Africa and these different places. And you just don't see them as much anymore, because now I think it's only 8% of the world's population lives below the UN, the designated UN line for absolute poverty. So like there's still poor people everywhere, but like now there's enough of a standard of living. And this project is called the Avari River Restoration Project, has helped a lot of people have food and water security that they didn't have prior to this. This project began in 1986. That river had run dry for 60 years by doing Western practices. And then this guy, so now they're having a very hard time economically, and they have all these other issues. And in 1986, this guy named Rajendra Singh, and his nickname, it's a sweet nickname, the Waterman of India, the Waterman. And it's like that. You sound like a superhero. He should have just been like, I'm Aquaman. Yeah. And so this guy, and if you Google him, he looks exactly how you would think he would look. He looks like an extra in like Temple of Doom or something like that. Like just a sweet looking Indian guy. And he started building these. They're like this kind of like a crescent moon shaped little dam, but it's made out of an earth mound. And they call them, I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong, but johads. And so they built one, and they realized that the place where they built the river actually, because they get these giant monsoons, and the monsoon but it's only for a season, and the monsoon would flow in the river for a period of time, but for we're talking about a matter of weeks, when historically they ran all year, perennially. There were these riverbeds. This is just a dry, barren riverbed, as dry as this cement here in this studio. And this guy builds this thing in 1986. They're like, hey, the river lasted about a month longer. So they built another one and another one and another one. And then by 1995, they had built 375 of these little crescent earth mound structures, and the river became flowing like year round again. And so in 9 years, they took, by doing these traditional Indian, basically it's like a dam, rebuilt the river system that supplied 70 different villages and covered 500 kilometers. So huge success. And then they took that, air quotes technology. It's a technology that's been around for thousands of years that we're like, get rid of that.
Yeah.
And they brought it back in. That project spread across the entire country. They built 9,000 total of those structures and brought 4 rivers that had been completely like extinct, dried up, and they're flowing again like they used to, like 100 before the English colonized. So
that's amazing.
Massive success story. So I'd say that's a pretty good thing, you know? And so now you have all these people who didn't have food or water before, now are able to do it. There's a similar one in Africa where in Zimbabwe, shout out Za.
Shout out Za.
Love Za. And it's called the Chikukwa Project. And same thing. They had, Zimbabwe, if you Google Zimbabwe, it's beautiful. They got these green mountains, and they have, so this one particular area, they had this hillside forest that they cleared to do agriculture. Same thing. Everything dry, dusty, fucked up. Sort of like the people of the village. It wasn't like some UN project. They're like, we got to put those trees back. Put the trees back, and they were like, all right, and they managed it themselves. They'd be like, we're going to have a fence line here. No animals can go in here yet. We're going to plant X amount of trees. And they took this area that had been, same thing. No water security, no food security. People were leaving. People were starving to death. They did this project, and all of a sudden, life comes back to the area. So now they're able to farm it, but they do it responsibly. They don't just clear everything out. They built water tanks that, flow off of these trees in the mountains and stuff. And now it's like this is a thriving community where you have trees, you have wildlife, you have agriculture, and everything is kind of living in water, and everything is living harmoniously. So it's like you can impact your environment in a positive way and see immediate results, because we're always like, wow, like your favorite fact, I've heard you say before, like Chicago is going to be like Arizona in like 25 years or something like that because of global warming. It doesn't have to be. Like we could do things that spread things around, and there's a lot of stories like that. So remember when we were kids, I feel like this is another thing we don't hear about as much anymore, the ozone layer. You remember that? We got holes in it, aerosol cans, we're going to fuck up the ozone layer.
Not really.
Maybe that was before your time.
Maybe.
Do you know what the ozone layer is? Have you heard of it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
of course.
So it was like this big crisis, and I remember like, oh, don't have hairspray in an aerosol bottle because it's going to poke a hole in the ozone layer. How that was true, or if it is true, I don't know, but that was always what we were told. Ozone layer is healing. It's healing by 3% growth every 10 years, and they say that the northern hemisphere is projected to be completely healed by the end of the 2030s, and the entire world is going to be healed by 2060. So I guess the poles and the southern hemisphere take a little bit longer for whatever reason, but the whole world is going to have the ozone layer is going to be supposedly completely healed in the next 40 years. So pretty fucking good, and that'll help because the ozone layer, it reflects off a lot of these UV lights, and they're saying that this healing that's going on by especially in the northern hemisphere in America, it's going to prevent 400 million Americans from contracting skin cancer because the ozone layer has been repaired that much.
Oh, damn.
Damn, big one. They've also come up with we've heard about the coral reefs, right?
Yeah.
Coral reefs.
That's fucked.
Bad situation. What are you going to do about it?
You got something good to say about that? Because all I've heard is fucking horrible, horrible, horrible.
I do. This was a new one for me too. They have, you know what IVF is?
I don't.
In vitro fertilization for women who are having a hard time conceiving a child.
Yeah.
This is like they call it coral reef IVF. So they've developed these different pools around the world, but mainly in Australia because they have the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef, and they speculate it's because of rising ocean temperatures that has killed a ton of coral reef. And so they basically did IVF for coral reefs. And they have planted billions and billions of these baby corals back in around that area, and you're seeing it like grow and take off again. And there's this other place somewhere in the Pacific Ocean as well, that there was a typhoon that went through and destroyed like one of the world's largest coral reefs. So they did the same thing where they planted this IVF, and now it's like almost completely back to normal. So they've developed a way to like almost like a chicken, like when you have like birth little chicken eggs and you have them in the incubator, like they're incubating coral reefs in these like pools and transporting them to these areas where they need growth, and it's working.
That's awesome.
So they're able to restore that. And they like, and I'm saying billions and billions of coral, they call them coral reef babies, were planted in 2021, and they continue to grow and grow. And like, I don't know if it's still like kind of dire, but it sounds like we're on a track where the coral reefs will be okay.
That's great.
You like panda bears?
Yeah, I know they were fucking hurting for a while, right?
No longer. So they are officially off of the endangered species list. So it's a combination of China.
What a day that was, huh? Like
big day for panda bears. So speaking of IVF, they need a lot of IVF. Pandas are like too lazy to fuck. So to me, that's natural selection, but they have restored a lot of their natural habitat in China, maybe through this project, the Great Green Wall. But so they have more land to use, which was part of the problem. And then they've done like a lot of like, they've assisted them with their population growth, but they're technically no longer, they're still like, there's different classifications, but they're like the most serious one is endangered, and they're off of the endangered list. So they're now into like the threatened group, but they're trending in the right way. Renewable energy in 2021 hit an all-time high. So I don't know what a gigawatt is or how to measure that, but the all-time high is 290, and they did that in 2021, while simultaneously, which it shouldn't be that surprising, the price of solar has dropped 89% in 10 years. So, it used to be this big project, right? Like you got to have the panels, you got to manufacture it. It's not super efficient. Well, they've improved the technology. They've improved like installation costs, and they've improved the output. So if you were going to, and again, I'm making up the numbers, but it used to be like, well, we're on solar, but it's costing you way more on solar than it would be to burn a fossil fuel. And now that's, I think it's probably still more expensive than burning coal or wood or something, but it's still such a net positive, and the price is now, at least comparable, that it's where it's worthwhile. Electric cars outsold diesel cars in Europe for the first time ever last year. So like their electric cars are gaining market share. And then it's like this, and then, talking about the water thing, and I'm just spitting facts now. There's 3.8 billion people in the world that have access to clean water now that didn't in 1970. So over a 50-year period, we have about half of the world's population now has access to clean water.
All right.
So that's a big one. And then like this energy thing is really important. So when we're talking about, these poor places that, you can't tell these people not to cut down the forest, not to use dirty fuels. It's like, well, what else are we going to heat our house with? Well, you need to have cleaner energy in the world, because there are 8 million people a year still that die from inhaling dirty fuel sources. So a lot of places all over the world are cooking inside, and they're heating their pots and keep cooking their food with coal, like literally lumps of coal. And we just did a snake draft where we talked about the movie Lion. Well, that's like a scene early in the movie of these two poor kids in India who are like seeing these like freight trains come through that have like mounds and mounds of coal from the coal mine, that they'll run up to the trains and steal lumps of coal to like heat their house and be able to cook food with, or sell it at the market trade it for milk or things like that. And those produce like these really toxic fumes that if you're burning them inside, you'll get like carbon monoxide poisoning and or lung cancer and die. And so if you're able to, if energy costs of renewables and other fuel sources are available and cheap compared to coal and wood, then those people aren't going to die. Those 8 million people that are dying now from burning dirty fuel sources to cook and heat their homes won't happen anymore. And then people are just getting more and more creative. Like I saw there's this company in America, I think they're in Oregon or Washington, that they've come up with new ways to make plastics out of wood, basically. So they're planting trees all the time, but then harvesting them, or they're stationing their plants outside of like decommissioned paper mills and things like that, and they take the byproduct and make plastic out of it, and that's more biodegradable. And then the last fact I have is like what they're doing in LA is it's still kind of like a trial pilot program, but it's something I think I've said on one of our like dumb ideas project to save the world. They're painting these streets with this super reflective, I guess I would call it like an asphalt, but it reflects the light back up into the atmosphere as opposed to sucking it in. Like if you touch like black hot top, or if you walk on blacktop, like it burns your feet in the summer. If you step on the sidewalk, it's still hot, like on the white sidewalk, but it's not as hot as the blacktop. And that's just basic physics. So if you paint all the streets white or put it on this reflective, there's almost like a taupe or a gray, it reflects more energy back. But put it on all the fucking skyscraper buildings too. Just keep bouncing that light back up in the atmosphere, and that helps cool the planet. So people are coming up with crazy ideas, and there's more funding for it than ever, and it's actually working. So like this, way less people die from like cataclysmic events like hurricanes and things like that than they used to 50, 100 years ago, because our buildings are getting better. So there's all these, like there's a lot of climate, I would say, alarmism out there, but there's not a lot of climate like, hey, we're actually doing some good things that can encourage people to do more. And because we're making progress, it's almost like, and I want to put that out there. It's almost like going to the gym, right? Like, like why the fuck? Like I'm not making any progress, like, and you just give up, as opposed to like, hey, like we're actually doing some things that are pretty good here. So things aren't necessarily the best, but they're a lot better than they were in 1990. And that's like a global phenomenon that's happening because everybody is kind of pulling the rope from the same direction. Like everybody knows it's a problem, and there are certain people who won't or can't get on board, but a lot of people are. And I don't know what all the answers are, but I like having some good news out there.
Yeah, it's some positivity in a late Earth Day podcast.
Big time.
That's great.
Every day is Earth Day.
What about you though? You dispute the electric car thing, I know.
I don't know if I dispute it, but I just don't think it's necessarily like 100% awesome, because there are like, you do have to do significant mining to get those raw materials to make the batteries. And there's and they come from these areas that are a lot of, almost like, you've seen the movie Blood Diamond, where with Leo, yeah. So it's like it was like the diamond industry was always in these conflict regions. Well, a lot of these, I want to say Afghanistan might have the largest lithium deposits, I think it is, anywhere in the world. And I remember hearing, like we told them that at one point when we were in Afghanistan. And they were like, yeah, we don't give a fuck. They're like, what? Like this, you could be like the Saudi Arabia of the next 100 years. Like, we don't fucking care. And get out of here. And so, so there are, so that is like part of the issue with the electric car. But I think it's still a net positive, this electric car. So, and they're only going to improve. So like, what's the Tesla get for maximum range now? Like 300 miles?
Yeah, it just depends. You could get 300 plus, yeah.
Okay.
And there's this new company out now that's called Lucid, and they're claiming like 500 miles.
And I'm sure in 10 years it'll be 1,500 miles.
Yeah.
And who drives 1,500 miles? Fucking nobody.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think, if there's a market for it, which there clearly is, just look at like what Tesla is doing. Like,
they're a supply problem. They're not a demand problem.
Right.
They can't make their cars fast enough.
Exactly.
I waited 5 months. I ordered mine in August. I got mine in January.
January, I think you said, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So there's definitely no issue with demand. So people are willing to pay for it. People like it, especially right now with the way gas prices are. It's probably an economic, a household benefit to have an electric car.
Well, Elon and Tesla, like it's solar too, right?
Well, they bought Solar City.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I know, like, it's crazy. If people would be shocked to know if you've never checked it out, but their website It basically, you hop on there and it doesn't take you right to the cars. Like, you got to pick solar or cars.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Yeah.
like it's that much like.
Yeah,
in
and
their
he's
brand.
talked about. He said this somewhere. It might have been on that recent TED Talk. I saw a clip of it where he's like, "We have the technology to have the entire grid of the United States on solar right now." He goes, "It would take significant investment." But he's like, if you put it, and he mentioned, I think it was like Northwest Utah or something like that, because they get a shit ton of sunlight, or somewhere in Utah. He's like, we could just put out like 10 mile square, 10 miles, some big area. He's like, there's not a lot going on there. Like, made a little quip about it. But he's like, if you put those solar panels in that area, you could have the entire country on solar.
It would be huge.
It would be huge,
Yeah.
And Dave and I just did that trip out to Nebraska, through Iowa and Nebraska. And it was just, wind farms as far as you can see. And, and there's so many, another thing, there's the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Completely powered by wind. So I don't know where their generator is or anything like that. If it's on top of the building, I'm not sure. But that building, and there's 13 or 14 other major skyscrapers in New York and across the country that are all powered by wind.
Damn.
So it's, and then, if you're a person that, you're worried about things, whether it's government overreach or the apocalypse or whatever, being able to just have on your own property, be able to supply your own electricity, pretty good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of benefits to it, and things are getting better all the time. Is that the outputs, like I said, renewable energy hit an all-time high while the price hit an all-time low. That is a very good thing.
This is like the opposite of that doomsday one we did.
Yeah.
And I know that was
Mm-hmm.
it was late December 2020 or late December. It had to be 2020
Yeah.
because it was the
Was that the one we were talking about,
everything, nuclear war, everything.
Yeah.
We got into
how the world's going to end?
Yes.
And we had asteroids and
if a nuke did happen, here's how you would die.
Yeah.
The ash and
it was the Yellowstone caldera.
Yes, if
that
Yellowstone happened, here's how you would die.
We would die from it. In Chicago, we die from inhaling dust.
That was a great episode.
December 2020.
Okay, yeah, and those are all on YouTube too.
Yep.
I know we're advanced. We've advanced far enough.
Look at us.
So many years ago.
Yeah.
All right, I know those are at least on YouTube.
Yep.
Because I know sometimes there's
2019 where you're not.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, 2019 we're not so much, and I know. I think there's been almost 800 of these. I think at some point iTunes is starting to pull some of them. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know.
800 episodes of Dog Walk?
Crazy.
That's so many.
It's a lot of episodes.
Yeah. Shout out to you guys for listening.
Yeah, shout out to you guys. You're right. I
I
think
think the number's out there somewhere on HQ.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah,
At least
that's right.
the ones that you have gone through HQ.
If it's not, it's damn close. We're
Yeah.
approaching 800.
It's 1,000 by the end of the year.
That's
then
a fuck ton of episodes, dude.
what do we do for 1,000 episodes?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Silence.
Yeah, just retire.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. Okay. That was fascinating.
Yep.
So we'll stop there. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like you said, thanks again.
Yep.
That's it for today. We'll see you all tomorrow.